We'll do it live. Okay.
No.
We'll do it live. Fuck it. Do it live. I'll write it and we'll do it live. Thing sucks.
Welcome. Good evening, everybody. It's Friday night and we're going to do it live. Don't act like you've got anything better to do. I know you. Thanks for joining me, guys. I'm going to make this one as light as I possibly can. We have the identity of the mystery foreign buyer who snatched up $65 million worth of primo beachfront real estate in Malibu that got destroyed in the Palisades Fire. Jen Van Laar from Red State has done the work that nobody else felt like doing. And very easily, when you find out how she did it, very easily identified who these vultures are. And there seems to be some confusion about who they are and whom they represent. We'll get to the bottom of that. On top of that, Spencer Pratt, yet again, this guy is like, he's a human news printing machine. This guy already has heads rolling in DC already. This dude is doing more than I think anyone I can think of. I've never seen this before, especially with a wildfire. They are so quickly forgotten. I've talked about this a lot. You'll get the sympathy of the world after a major disaster for about 2 weeks. And then the news cycle fades and then it's gone. And nobody cares about you anymore. And because you don't make headlines anymore, politicians don't care. They don't care to help you at all. And this one has staying power. It was revivified by Spencer Pratt's tenacity. And this dude literally spends his entire day focused on this stuff. And it makes a difference. So we have Rick Scott is making things move in DC. And there's stuff coming up that I can't tell you about yet. But it's coming up within the next 2 weeks. It's going to be very interesting. Very interesting. On top of that, we've got the picket fire is still sort of picking away up in Napa. We're going to look into that. What do you guys want to talk about? That's what I want to talk about tonight. So why don't we go ahead and start with the picket fire? Let's just check in on it before we get to our big headline. Let's take a look. What is this thing doing? Let's run a little time lapse, shall we? We'll just look at the last 6 hours of activity. Now, while that's loading, I want to show you CAL FIRE LNU. Now, I've been heaping praise on CAL FIRE. I don't care what you think about these guys. I think they're a pretty damn good agency, and they just keep getting better and better. And their public information, they've really stepped it up. And they're no longer just posting acreage and containment. They are doing longer form videos where they're actually showing you, what they're actually doing, which is super impressive. So they're trying to educate people on tactics. They're trying to educate people on fire behavior. And I dig it, man. I dig it. Now, I told you yesterday that I didn't think the picket fire was going to be the one. I didn't think it was going to be the one. This area has been thinned out. I mistakenly attributed some of the burn scar that it's moving through as the Hennessy fire. And it is moving through the Hennessy fire, but it's also moving predominantly through the Glass fire, which is the same year, just a few months apart. So this area does have a good burn history. It's a nice shot of one of their C-130s doing some damage. And you can see that, fire's kind of smoldering. It had a little bit of a run today, I think. Oh, this wasn't loading in the background. What do we pay these people for? Come on. All right, it's almost loaded. So, it made a little bit of a push. Let's see what it's doing. Let's watch this through and see if we can analyze this fire behavior a little bit. I feel like this is a good vantage point for the most part. So, after the inversion lifted, I guess they're spying on somebody. After the inversion lifted, it slowly started to wake up, but then it wasn't until it found a drainage, and then you can see it spotted. You see how it spotted ahead of itself? It kind of crossed that drainage. It didn't seem to progress too much farther through this terrain. So I don't know, man. That's not very impressive. These are the typical diurnal winds in the area. This was predicted. I had mentioned this yesterday in my Twitter feed that you were going to see some of these westerly winds punch through and push it a little bit farther to the east. But to me, this is not very significant. So again, I will reiterate, this fire is not the one. There could be some crazy stuff that pops up. I know there's some thunderstorms potentially coming in, so maybe that kicks up and something really surprises us. But I don't think this is the one. So unless you guys have any questions on the picket fire, I feel like we should move on, shall we?
So since Gavin Newsom hasn't given us our Palisades investigation, Karen Bass just yesterday said she's delaying hers. The victims they're not okay with that. So we got Senator Rick Scott flew in from Florida.
How you doing?
And I let him know the victims out in the Palisades are demanding a congressional investigation. And Senator Rick Scott said,
I'm going to do my best to make sure it happens.
So stay tuned. I'll obviously keep you posted. We are going to get to the bottom of how our town burned down and how 12 senior citizens were killed. So stay tuned.
Man, like who else was surprised when he turned the camera and there's a senator from Florida just standing there? Like I said yesterday, Spencer had no idea who Rick Scott was. He has no idea. And he's on the boat of like, hey, anyone who wants to help and isn't here to milk us for something is welcome. He's not political at all. And remember, the Palisades is a very mixed community. It's predominantly liberal community. Politics is getting so weird, dude. It's getting so weird. I think, unfortunately, that's going to be kind of the theme of the day. You know, I mentioned Jen Van Laar's outfit multiple times. It's for a reason. And we're going to get to that. But let's take a look at what's the outcome of this meeting with Senator Rick Scott, who's the former governor of Florida. Because, you know, a lot of times politicians, they'll promise things, they'll show up and get their photo op. I'm not sure what he would benefit from by showing up to a disaster zone in California. But a lot of times it's just sort of empty promises. Well, we already have motion. We already, already. So Senator Scott already drafted a letter turning the screws on the Honorable Pam Bondi, the Attorney General of the United States. Now, they worked together because I believe she was his Attorney General in Florida when he was governor. So he already pushed this letter because, frankly, ever since the Palisades Fire ATF report has been submitted to DOJ, all of a sudden, it hit cold water. Hit cold water. I know you guys have heard me tell you that you're going to get news out of DC, and then it keeps getting pushed back. Well, the reason is because of this gal, or at least her office. So Rick Scott has pushed through this letter trying to turn the screws on us. And this is just a prelude to the upcoming congressional investigation. You guys should see the witness list. You should see who's on the list to be called to Congress. I will share that with you when I'm allowed to, but dude, there's going to be some fireworks in a few weeks. So it's going to be very interesting. Now, this is the letter from Rick Scott. He says, I want to thank you for your efforts to help victims of the January wildfires in California and for the work your team is doing to help bring transparency and accountability to this horrific situation. Palisades wildfire was among the most destructive in California history, burned over 23,000 acres, destroyed more than 6,800 homes and businesses, caused up to $54 billion in damage, and claimed 12 lives. Now, I told you that when Senator Scott went on this driving tour with Spencer, he was shocked. He was shocked. And Rick Scott is no stranger to disasters. Now, obviously, we know hurricanes decimate Florida, especially southern Florida, routinely. And hurricanes are actually the biggest ticket item when it comes to natural disasters. Why am I not showing up here? Hold on. Got to make sure that I'm here. Where am I? I just disappeared? Do I not exist? Oh, here we go. There we go. Now you get to see my mustache. So I told you guys how when Rick Scott went on this driving tour with Spencer, he was shocked. And hurricanes in Florida, they are the biggest ticket item when it comes to natural disasters. And the thing is, we focus a lot on wildfires because unlike hurricanes, wildfires are preventable, or at least the destruction from wildfires are 100% preventable. And that is kind of what separates it from other natural disasters. You know, a wildfire is largely, it's kind of this dual mode sort of disaster. It's both natural, but it's also totally under our control if we want it to be, if we take enough agency and responsibility. But that's part of the reason why wildfire destruction, I think, is so compelling. You know, there's a lot of reasons why fires go on for a long period of time. Usually a hurricane or a tornado, they kind of just sweep in and it's done. Wildfires are sort of like war. They're like campaigns of war. And we even call them campaign fires. And it's like this battle between man and nature. Whereas, you know, hurricanes and tornadoes, you kind of just hunker down in your bunker and that's it. All that said, the kind of destruction that you see out of hurricanes is unbelievable. And there have been some big ones. I think it was Andy in Florida and David were just absolutely horrendous, like straight up Hiroshima level damage. So when Rick Scott is shocked entering a disaster zone, that tells you something. Now, I want to continue with this letter. After a recent tour through the Palisades with Mr. Spencer Pratt, who has been a longtime resident of the community, I saw firsthand the devastation these wildfires caused. Not only did Mr. Pratt's family lose their home, but his parents lost theirs as well. Countless others were impacted by these events, and they have questions about the contributing causes of these fires and how they could have been prevented. By raising awareness and taking legal action, Mr. Pratt has been leading the fight for answers. As a member of the Senate Homeland Security and Governmental Affairs Committee, which oversees disaster relief, I aim to help him, his neighbors, and the Los Angeles community in that fight. The loss to the Palisades community is immeasurable. I know you have also met with Mr. Pratt and have dispatched the Bureau of Alcohol, Tobacco, and Firearms and Explosives, ATF, National Response Team to investigate the cause of the Palisades Fire. They've already determined a cause. It's just under wraps for some reason. I write to request a briefing by the ATF concerning the causes and contributing factors of the California wildfires from January 2025 and to get an update on the report that can be shared with the victims. Love it. Love it. Someone actually trying to break through that ice. Love this. ATF's report is already done. They just wanted to polish it. Okay. I want to also give you a firsthand update on what I saw and heard from residents regarding the lackluster response from the state of California and local officials. It looks like the Palisades has been completely erased, and I was shocked at how little has been done in the last 7 months to help people rebuild. Now, this is a senator from, 3,000 miles away, 4,000 miles away? Where are the California senators? Where are they? When was the last time you saw them hanging around the Palisades scar? When was the last time you saw them on a soapbox? You hear from Spencer Pratt 20 times a day, or at least I do. This dude is on a mission, and he's not going to let down his community. And this dude, wherever he goes, he's like, I mean, you know, he's always been a public figure, but like people want him to run for president. This dude he literally can't go like 20 minutes without people wanting to take their picture and saying, you know, we support you, we love what you're doing. I told you from very early on, his community loves him for this. And a lot of them are too scared to speak up for whatever reason. And so they're kind of just putting it all on his back because he has the balls to speak up. And so they will, you know, DM him, they'll get in group chats and they'll talk about what they've seen and what they know. And, you know, you hear stories about people who were able to defend their home with a garden hose because they were on the flanks and the winds were 38 miles an hour. They weren't hurricane force. And so for a lot of people, they didn't get gnarly winds channeling into, you know, like an eddy because of the terrain. And you have to wonder how many homes were in a similar situation where if there had just been somebody, just one person, to extinguish that little bit of fire in a hedge, that they may not have lost their homes. Well, people are starting to speak up, and the stories that are filtering in are very interesting. You're going to learn so much more in the next 2 weeks about this fire than in the last 7 months. Okay, stay tuned. Now, where are the California senators? Why is the senator from Florida leading this charge for justice? Well, let's take a look. We've got Senator Alex Padilla. Let's see what he's up to. Okay, let's see. This is his pinned tweet. Who cares? He's talking about alligator Alcatraz, so he's talking about Florida stuff. All right. So we got the Florida senator is talking about California issues, And we got the California senator talking about Florida issues. All right. Let's just search his profile for the word Palisades. Let's see how much this is at the front of his soapbox. That's not a lot. Holy shit. That's it. Oh my God. This is the senator. This is a senator from California. And he's got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. 7 posts total in the last 7 months. So my goodness. He was there once in April. He hasn't been back, even for a photo op, since April. They've only issued like 108 permits out of the thousands of homes. And this dude is he's just got 2 generic posts on the 6-month, half anniversary. What the fuck is this guy doing? He posed in front of one wood frame in April to promote some legislation that he was a part of. And that's it. That's it. This is what he's using his soapbox for. My God. Let's look at Adam Schiff. Okay, so he's posting about Ghislaine Maxwell, California's airports. Okay, he's posting about red flag conditions. Good. What does he have to say about the Palisades? Let's see how much he has put this front and center. Palisades from Adam Schiff. He received a briefing on January 9th. That's it. Dude, that's even less than Padilla. Oh my God. And this guy's from Southern California, so he should know better. He should know better. This is it. So he had one post on the second day of the IA, and then again 2 weeks later, then again in February, and then March 5th. He has not tweeted anything about the Palisades since March 5th. This is your senator, folks, looking out for you. So you have a senator from Florida doing more than both of the California senators combined. Why are they not trying to get a congressional investigation of what happened? What is the fucking problem here? Now, I noticed a comment just as we were picking through this. Look at this. What is this? This is in response to me tweeting about this action that Spencer got going. I like that he's helping the fire victims in California. I don't like the fact that he supports members of Congress who make millions trading stock. There always has to be this person who's in some kind of a weird political cult where their political tribalism has melted their brain. Now, please tell me a single congressperson who does not engage in insider trading. You think Adam Schiff and Alex Padilla aren't doing the exact same thing? That's the only reason you get into Congress, is to steal our fucking money and take advantage of your position of authority to make more money. That's all they do. Okay, so I don't know if Rick Scott is insider trading, but I imagine if he's in Congress, everybody does it. I don't like all this stuff. It's so silly. Now, on that note, we just learned, thanks to some great reporting by Jennifer Van Laar for Red State. Now, we have a theme going here. What is it with the blue state seems not interested in learning anything about the Palisades Fire? And you've got a red state senator who's all about it. And now you've got the literal publication, Red State. Exclusive. The foreigners buying the burned out lots at La Costa Beach in Malibu are New Zealand's Mowbray brothers, founders of Hong Kong-based global toy giant Azuru. Here are the incorporation docs for 3 of their shell corporations, which they used to purchase the lots, some of which were not on the market. Now, I pointed that out to you multiple times. It was in the opening video where you saw that some of these are the properties that we showed there, right? And some of them were off the market. Off the market. So some of these sales are just being done kind of like in the background. Now, there's a little bit of background on Zuru. Zuru recently launched Zuru Tech, which will build concrete prefab homes manufactured in its 8-acre facility in China, which would then be shipped to the US to place on the burned out lots, founder Nick Mowbray announced at the China Business Summit in New Zealand in July. So why all the secrecy in the US? Trying to keep landowners from knowing what's going on? This speaks to how Jennifer Van Laar, she is doing the work that apparently no journalists are interested in doing. I've been asking you guys this question for what, a month now? A month and a half? Hey, do you know who's buying up these lots? Because I do. Are there any journalists who are interested in checking this out? Any? And it's up to Jen Van Laar. She's the only person who's doing this work. And the way that she found out isn't from some like super top secret leak. These guys talked about it. They were bragging about it at the China Business Summit in New Zealand in July. That's it. So now, who are these people? What do they do? Well, Zuru they're a toy manufacturer, but now they've got their Zuru Tech. They claim that they have proprietary walls that are earthquake resistant, fireproof, well, yeah, and compliant with the most stringent seismic design standards. That's all perfect for the Malibu coast. But do we trust Chinese manufacturing? I wouldn't. Zuru also brags that its product and processes are environmentally responsible. But when you have to ship prefab concrete homes in tankers from China to the US, how is that environmentally responsible? This takes away American jobs in more ways than one. Now, as I understand the process of their building, they have like prefab molds that are reusable, and the concrete is done on site. That's what I understand. And it's very precise, and it's all sort of like modern-y looking stuff. The buildings aren't bad looking. They're fine. You know, I have no problem with that. But we're gonna get in a little deeper on this company and these people, because referring to them as New Zealanders is very deceptive. Trust me. More info on burned out Malibu lots sold to foreign investors. People have been asking, who sold the lots? Fire victims. Who do you think? And I'm sure they weren't informed who the true buyers were. Now, I showed some of these properties in that opening sequence. I know this one was in there as $12.8 million. And this was the one that I featured that was off the market. You know, these are classic homes that any of us who've taken PCH, we all know. You drive this route enough times. I used to drive it just about every single day growing up. You memorize these places, and some of these places, they have been owned by the same owner since like the 70s, and now they're burned out, and they're selling to Chinese shell corporations. This one sold for $24.995 million. My goodness. The lot sold for $5 million. Man, pennies on the dollar. Pennies on the dollar. Yeah, I remember coming across this one. That it was for sale in 2024 for $25 million. My goodness. Now, these properties, they're going to take forever to build, because they have to use septic tanks, and they have to build a seawall here. They have to build a seawall in order to keep the septic tanks from washing out to the ocean. So it's going to be a massive, massive undertaking. And so we knew that it wasn't going to be just an individual buying these properties. This is going to be a multinational corporation that's going to do this, because it's only a soulless corporation that's going to have the bandwidth and the apathy to put up with this process. The normal human beings who used to occupy these homes, they are not going to want to deal with how much California and Los Angeles politicians like to punish them. But a multinational corporation will just deal with it. Now, let's learn a little bit more about this New Zealand company that's based in Hong Kong. Here's a little bit about us. We call this a clue. We call that a clue. Now, this is one of the fellas involved. Now, I love New Zealand. I love New Zealand. I've been there a bunch of times. Beautiful country. They got a little weird during COVID, didn't they? It got a little weird. But these guys are toy manufacturers. Now, here's the thing, guys. You might think that, oh, you were saying that it was Chinese companies buying up these properties, and these guys are Kiwis. These guys aren't Chinese. Now, it's three siblings, it's two brothers and a sister. What do we know about these people? Are they really Kiwis? You be the judge. Here's an interview with the sister.
But at the time, it was exciting, right? Like we were just these young Kiwi kids with big goals, big ambitions, big desires. So Matt and I lived up in China. So I was in China for 16 years, living in China full time. I can safely say I would have been one of the only female white faces in Huadu. So we didn't have friends. We did not have people that you could anchor into or call or use as a mentorship. It was literally Matt and myself. Our cousin Simon was over there as well. It's hot, it's sticky, it's dirty, it is fast paced, there's language barriers, there's cultural nuances that you can't even start to understand and comprehend. It's grounded in this resourcefulness and this desire to get ahead that you can't even appreciate or articulate unless you've lived in it and been part of it. And the pace of innovation and change and speed of discovery is something that's unparalleled. I would say we learnt business the Chinese way, and that was the greatest asset we could have ever received.
We learned business the Chinese way, and it was the greatest asset. Now, they have lived in China basically their entire adult life. She was married to a Chinese guy for many years. They moved to China from New Zealand. At the age of 18, one of the brothers moved there. The other brother, I believe, was 22. So they dropped out of university. They were, living on a cow farm in New Zealand. Most people in New Zealand work on cow farms. It's just like, it's the way of life out there. It's a really beautiful place. Now, you heard the way she's gushing about China and how the China way of doing business was the best lesson they could have learned. What does that tell you about how they operate? Now, they've formed Chinese shell corporations to purchase up these lots. Now, anyone trying to say, well, they started their business in New Zealand, they just headquartered it in China, and they just lived there for 2 decades. Okay. What do you guys know about operating in China? Do you think that the communist country of China has a free market that you can just, as a foreigner, set up a business in China and it's still your business? That's not how it works, okay? So China itself must have an agent and a stake in your business. They do not own their factories where they manufacture their cheap toys. So what are they known for? Well, what they're known for is manufacturing really cheap toys and breaching intellectual property. They have a history of getting blasted for stealing patents, which in China is totally kosher because they do not respect intellectual property laws. They got their big break came from Walmart, and they ramped up their production in China. So this is a family business, but they all live in China. So things sped up. They hired more people in China and learned how to make better toys by identifying trends and improving design. But here we go again. Still, the IP issues, this is a euphemism for saying they stole people's patents. The IP issues that dogged the firm early on haven't totally gone away. That means they're still getting sued for ripping off other products. And Zuru is in a legal fight with Lego. The Danish toy giant argues Zuru has copied the design of certain figurines. Dude, that looks, yeah, those look like Legos, dude. So this is a really stand-up company. They make cheap products in China, and they steal intellectual property. Incredible. Allegedly. So I don't get sued by them, because clearly they got plenty of money. And Casey points out they have the money to pay off the Coastal Commission. And this is a very key point. The Coastal Commission, you know what? Everyone bitches about the Coastal Commission, but I got to tell you, the way this whole fire sale has been going down with the Palisades, I want to take the Coastal Commission and inject it with steroids. And I want them to block these people from building in Malibu. Now I'm actually rooting for the Coastal Commission. They've brought in my inner bootlicker by having these. Dude, this is a Chinese company. This is not a New Zealand company. It's absurd to say that. Oh man. So this was utterly predictable. And these are the kinds of people that we're talking about. You know, they're going to brag about the sustainability of their stuff. All right, that's fine. Whatever. You know, it's all good. But Caitlyn Jenner was chiming in. Caitlyn Jenner has an opinion on this stuff. Now, Caitlyn Jenner, who is, Bruce Jenner. I miss Bruce. So I did track and field in college. And so Bruce was a hero of mine. It's always going to be Bruce to me. But what the fuck happened? So Caitlyn properly pointed out that the main problem with the Palisades Fire was no underbrush or forest management by the state on their lands, providing a plethora of fuel for wildfires. No underbrush on my land. The only reason my home survived the last round of fires was because of the ground clearance we are mandated to do. The exact clearance that the state does not do. She went on to claim having state lands on her boundary is dangerous and a major liability, as the Forestry Service don't follow any standards to provide ground clearance the way they force their overtaxed citizens to. Caitlyn, you are wrong. It is not the Forestry Service. My God, dude, the Daily Mail is garbage. I can't click on anything. This is California State Park. So yes, Caitlyn is identifying it is the state lands, but it's not the U.S. Forestry Service that's responsible for this. And Caitlyn posted this picture of the overgrown brush on Topanga State Park. And this, of course, is the issue. Now, this is a nice horse property that Caitlyn has. Lots of dirt. You can still have some trees. These trees are going to be fine because they're alone, basically in an island of dirt. So you're all good. Okay? It's really that simple. Now, you guys remember this? Remember this? We were called conspiracy theorists for this. I went on Spencer's show, and I talked about this.
What's really disturbing is what they're planning to do with the Palisades afterwards. Existing legislation in California mandates that they build homeless housing in the Palisades, and it's hidden in a transportation bill. Why not just rebuild what we had here? You can see the vultures. They're circling to pick the carcass clean of the Palisades, because can you imagine how long developers have been lusting after this land? And all they needed was somebody to shake the Etch-a-Sketch. And now they have this foothold where they can come in and slam in high-density housing.
The developer just right here in the Alphabet Streets bought up all these lots and already applied to put duplexes on them. Already too many people here, and now we're going to have duplexes and high-rises.
I can't fathom anyone, except like maybe a California politician, who would look at that cluster F of an evacuation where you had everybody slammed in Palisades Drive, had to abandon their cars. Who would look at that and think, hey, you know what would make this better? 50,000 more people. What we should be doing is we should be banning more density in a fire zone.
That's my inner bootlicker. I want to ban this. I want to ban that. Get these foreign buyers out of here. But honestly, I hope that Rick Scott actually does propose a federal law that would ban foreign buyers from snatching up properties impacted by wildfires. Because I've talked about this. If you allow this to happen, if you allow these billionaires from China who are, were born in New Zealand, but they live in China. I think one of them moved back to New Zealand like during COVID because it was a little too intense for them in China. Now all of a sudden, they wanted to take advantage of their slave labor so they can make their cheap, shitty products and steal people's intellectual property. So they wanted the safe haven of China for all that lawless bullshit. But then the moment they started welding people in their apartments, they're like, I gotta get the fuck back to Whangarei. But we cannot allow this stuff to happen. You cannot allow high density housing to be put in the stead of this, because all it does is it signals that you can purge an American city with wildfire, especially in California, because the California politicians are going to make it so painful to rebuild that you will lose half the population through attrition, and scumbags from foreign companies and foreign countries can now snatch up this property and then totally rewrite the culture. And this is unacceptable. So this needs to be banned. 100% needs to be banned. Now, when I was talking about what California politicians were planning to do, forget these like foreigners from China, these multimillionaires buying up this property. Dude, your own politicians hate your guts. They want to do this to you anyway. And they want to build high rises in the Palisades. And when Spencer and I were calling this out, they called everybody conspiracy theorists. The LA Times even libeled him. Now, they are cloaked by an army of attorneys and the most ridiculous case law that will protect them from getting sued by Spencer, even though I think that's bullshit. But remember when we were talking about SB 779, that was Scott Wiener, the California state senator, who's always sneakily trying to ram this stuff through the back door. Wiener is always trying to jam this stuff right through the back door all the time. Now, they told us we were conspiracy theorists. This is a new article. Shout out Sue Thompson, the great Sue Thompson, who always has the goods. Lafayette, this is up in the East Bay. SB 79 would allow dense housing to be built near transit without regard to wildfire danger. Guys, we cannot do this. What is with this commie gobbledygook where they just want to use disasters as their proving grounds for all the commie bullshit that they want to do? Like, I'm not going to argue about the merits of high density housing, but the idea of building high density housing in a fire zone is insane. You have to be a psychopath or a moron or just a communist, which is both. You got to be a psychopath and a moron to be a commie. Why are we doing this? And why are you calling me a conspiracy theorist when I warned you that this was going to happen? And it's happening. Now, fortunately, we made enough of a stink that Karen Bass and the LA City Council actually turned on this stuff. They turned on it. Thank God. After calling us conspiracy theorists and telling us it wasn't happening, they announced it proudly. Like, oh, we voted down allowing for SB 79. Now the Palisades can decide if they want this to apply or not. Now, it should be banned. It's not enough to just say, oh, the Palisades. Because guess what? There are political leaders in the Palisades who want this. You guys notice how quiet Rick Caruso has been? You guys notice that? Anyone else notice this? Daniel Firecopter says, yeah, the more people in the Palisades, the next fire that'll happen there during a wind event will make the area more chaotic with people trying to evacuate. As if that evacuation weren't bad enough. Now imagine 50,000 more people trying to walk out of there. Casey says, and the people in that high density housing will not have cars and they will depend on public transportation for evacuation. 100% correct. That's the thing. It's like the whole point of the high density housing in their minds, it's a way of tackling emissions from vehicles, right? That's the whole Rube Goldberg thing that they're going for. That's fine. Like, I'm not going to argue about the merits of reducing CO2. I'm okay with pursuing that. But this is such a warped way of doing this. You want to do high density housing? Put it in Lancaster. Why are you trying to put it in an area that doesn't want it? Why would you do that? Like, I'll never be able to afford to live in the Palisades. You know, that's okay. I don't hate on it. I got no beef with, the people who can afford to live there. But like, why are we trying to experiment with disaster zones? What is it with taking advantage of disasters that these people always do? And this brings me to the point that, like, I'm always trying to avoid getting into political tribalism, but I'm noticing a trend. And I don't know if this is just a coincidence. Now, obviously, California is very poorly run, and California is uniformly run by Democrats entirely, right? It's the governor. It's always a Democrat. Arnold Schwarzenegger was the only Republican, but he wasn't a Republican. Like, he won because he's Arnold. That's why he won. Let's get real, right? The entire legislature completely dominated by Democrats. Most of the mayors, Democrats. Obviously, the mayor of Los Angeles, Democrat. What is going on? Where your senators, they have 4 tweets about the Palisades fire in 8 months now, almost 9 months, 4 tweets. And you've got a senator from a red state across the country who's done more in the last 72 hours than either of the 2 California senators, one of whom, doesn't Schiff live in Burbank? He's just over the hill. They had the La Tuna Canyon fire up there. It almost wiped out parts of Burbank, right? The fuck are we talking about? Why are they not helping? The other thing is, a buddy of mine who lives in the Palisades was talking about, like, they had someone in their family who was like, I don't like that. I don't like that. Like, people are going after Gavin Newsom. Why? He fucked up. Well, I'm worried that it's going to like hurt his election. What? This is what we care about? Dude, there are people in a legitimate cult. I keep saying this. You have to be able to criticize your guy. This is like serious Stockholm syndrome that we see in a lot of people in California. This person had someone in their own family lose their home in the Palisades Fire. And yet they're shying away from criticizing Gavin Newsom because of, his totally unkempt Topanga State Park. They don't want to criticize him because they're worried that it might damage him politically. Are you serious? This is what we're doing? And then talk about cowardice. Where's Rick Caruso? Where is Rick Caruso? Does anybody know? Phil Cunningham says, my comments are taking 10 minutes to appear. Phil says he's been to China. There's always someone from the party monitoring. This is true. I will never go back to China. I worked there twice. I worked there when I was running medical for the Olympic beach volleyball team. I worked in Shanghai for one of the international tournaments. And then I worked again when I was running the film crew for the Electric Daisy Carnival when we did EDC China, when we got literally chased out of the country by communist state police. We had all the permits. Problem is, we didn't pay off the right people, apparently. Not we, the festival organizers. They failed to pay off the right people. And so the cops showed up at the site of the concert. And one of our PAs, she comes running out just as we're showing up on site. And she's like, the communist police are in there. They're looking through all your bags. And so we just turned around and ran. We ran up on the main stage. So EDC is like, it's the biggest music festival in the world. It's a giant rave. The mothership is EDC Las Vegas, where they'll have like 600,000 people there, right? So we go up on the main stage behind like the big pyrotechnics platform, and we all had these shirts that say film crew. And so we turned them inside out, and then two at a time, we just ran out of the venue and tried to track down taxi cabs. And there were plainclothes, commie, state police tracking us everywhere. And you can always tell because they're kind of walking around trying to pretend like they're not looking at you, but they're looking at you. And if you look closely, they'll have surveillance in their ear, and it's like really subtle. There's cameras everywhere. Every inch of that country where there are humans is covered in cameras. And their cameras have the ability to identify you by your gait, just by the way you walk. They've identified a way where the way that you walk is actually like a fingerprint. And so they can track you on camera without ever seeing your face. And they have AI that's doing that. This was like 15 years ago that technology came out. Can you imagine what they have now? That's China for you. It's a hellhole. Now, Rick Caruso. I've sort of kept quiet on Rick Caruso, but his absence from this discussion, I know that I posted a video not too long ago. I think it was like 5 or so live streams ago, where he was talking to Seedorf, who I love, who's got great bone structure. Seedorf is great. And Caruso actually had some good comments where, he was saying that, we haven't done enough. They haven't cleared the areas around Brentwood. And I kind of teased him how, like, I'm always talking about, hey, Topanga, you got to watch out. And he's talking about, hey, Brentwood, you got to watch out. That's the difference between the guy who's raised by hippie artists and then the multi-billionaire. But this dude has been, he's been very quiet. And I don't know why, like, his opponent is kind of responsible for a lot of the failings on the Palisades Fire. And she was in Ghana during the fire. Why is he not absolutely pounding her over that? It's curious, right? Now, I remember I had this post way back. When was this? I think it was like 3 days after the fire started. It was January 10th or so. January 11th. This is 3.5 days after the fire. And I said, Rick Caruso is very lucky he lost the mayoral race, because this exact same fire would have happened on his watch, and it would be hung around his neck. and the impossibly odd circumstance of his building being the only one to survive in the Palisades village, followed by his further enrichment from redeveloping the sudden massive blank slate the fire created, would have cast an intractable suspicion over him that would have purged him from polite society for eternity. Could you imagine if Rick Caruso had won? And I say that the same exact fire would have occurred on his watch. Now, he had pre-positioned some private firefighters around his structure. So you might be tempted to say, well, he would have had firefighters pre-positioned up there. It's possible. He might have. But he's not the fire chief, but he might have done that. But the conditions in Topanga State Park were so bad that may not have mattered too much, right? He probably wasn't going to get the reservoir filled, so the copters wouldn't be able to get water out of there. So the same exact fire would have happened because he wasn't going to be clearing out state park property. He wasn't going to do that. And so the town would burn down anyway, and it would be hung around his neck, right? Because when a fire gets like that and when it gets picked up by the winds, there's not a lot that you can do, especially with how unprepared everyone seems to be, right? You have the police telling people to get out of their cars and just abandon their cars with the keys, take their keys with them. My God, dude. So the same thing would have happened. His building would have survived. And then all of a sudden, developers are making a killing on this heretofore unavailable real estate. You don't think that people would have been up his anus for that? Are you kidding me? With all the tinfoil hats that we have? But that's a legitimate one. You know, Rick Caruso has been noticeably silent on all this SB 79 stuff. Do you think that maybe he kind of wants to build high rises in the Palisades? I don't know if he does, but he's a developer, makes money off of development. Wouldn't surprise me. But I've been really disappointed with the lack of leadership from this guy. Where is he? Why is this up to Spencer Pratt to do all this stuff? Where's Rick Caruso? He's got the resources to mobilize a very serious PR campaign. Why isn't he doing it? And in fact, he seems to be throwing money behind Gavin Newsom. What is going on? What is going on? Why do we have Florida senators doing the business of California senators? Why are we doing this? Why is it that Jen Van Laar from Red State is the only journalist who's interested in looking up this stuff? Why is she the only one? I don't get it. Does anyone have an answer? Like, I'm genuinely asking this question. Why does it seem to be divided amongst political lines, where it seems like right-wing people are the only ones pursuing answers? They're the only ones who are interested in what went wrong? Why does the left seem so allergic to trying to find answers about what went wrong? I mean, what I think it might be, hey, Rick is a developer and he needs permits. Yeah, that's probably why he's silent. He wants to get those permits through before he says anything. We'll give him the benefit of that. Maybe that's what it is. Maybe it's not conniving. He's just looking out for his business. That's fine. I'll give him that. But like, I don't understand why, like I told you that story about someone in their own family lost their home, and yet they were upset that people were criticizing Gavin Newsom because they were worried that it might hurt his election chances. What are we doing? This is legitimate Stockholm syndrome. And so what I think is happening, because California is just it's monopolized by Democrat leadership, that, this is actually one of those rare places where it's like, there's literally no escaping accountability for one political party. So everything that happens in California, they own it. You know what I mean? It's not like DC where the balance of power shifts every 4 years or 2 years or whatever. No, California, there's only one party that owns every single thing that happens there. And so they can't escape it. And so I think when something bad happens, you get that dynamic of, dude, we don't really want to look into what went wrong because that would mean it would make our team look bad. I don't know how many times I got to say this, guys. Political tribalism is melting your brains. If you cannot find the impulse to investigate a multi-fatality fire that's going to cost you $200 billion, and destroy the character of your own town because you're afraid of the political fallout. Dude, politicians are rental cars. You use them to get to where you want to go, and then you broom them and never think about them again. You need to stop idolizing these people. Stop putting them on a pedestal. So if you are a Republican and one of your Republican congressmen does something bad, broom him. And the same if you were on the left. You got to stop doing this stuff. We need more people united. It's absolutely crazy that whenever like Spencer is posting stuff, again, I still don't know who he votes for. I talked to him like 5 times today. We literally never, ever have discussed like what party we belong to, who we vote for. It doesn't matter, guys. God, stop with this stuff. You know, I have quite a few followers of, you know, very mixed backgrounds. But the thing is, you would think that I only associate with the right because lately, you know, a lot of my attention has been on the Palisades fire. And it seems like the only people interested in uncovering what went wrong and how to prevent it, the only people who seem to want to analyze this are people on the right. Now, I'm sure that some people are motivated because, oh yeah, this makes Gavin Newsom look bad, and so they want to exploit it. But that's not all that it is. And I'm telling you, especially not the case with Spencer. If Gavin Newsom were to turn on a dime right now and say, you know what, I'm going to stop campaigning in Texas. I'm going to stop whatever this redistricting, I can't even follow it. It's such gobbledygook. I don't even know what the fuck he's doing. All this like flashy bullshit that he's doing when he's all coked out and going to Texas. If he were to just drop that and say, you know what, I'm going to put up a camper on Chautauqua Boulevard, and I'm going to use my soapbox every single day to put pressure on every politician to get this work done, and I'm not going to stop until it's done. Spencer would be bringing the dude coffee. He would be bringing Gavin Newsom soy matcha lattes every morning if he were to do that, right? This is not political. This is just about restoring a community that is like an institution of Southern California. Daniel Firecopter says, that's why I don't like politics. I just ignore that stuff. Whoever thought that a helicopter would be so wise? I wonder if he has a mustache. It's a very wise thing to say. You know, and that's the thing. It's like, I don't like to talk about politics publicly. I'll talk politics, you know, with my wife, with things that are actually relevant to us, you know. I'll talk politics with my buddy when we go golfing, but that's usually not what we're talking about. And in Tennessee, people don't talk politics a lot. It was so different in California. It seemed like that's all anybody wants to talk about, and they make it their entire identity. Guys, it's really dangerous to do. We have so much more in common than we have apart. But this political tribalism legitimately melts your brains. You know, I've got quite a few guys who follow me who are sort of on the periphery of the fire world. They're not necessarily operators, but they work in the wildfire space, and they're pretty liberal guys. They really dislike Trump, but they hate what Gavin Newsom and Karen Bass are doing. They probably voted for them. But because they understand the reality of wildfire and the problems associated with it, they're not going to let their tribalism distract them from criticizing the people who deserve the criticism. And so you guys all need to take that as a lesson. I know all of you who are listening right now, you all know this. Like you're all here, you're from mixed backgrounds, and we're all participating, and we're all kind of on the same page here. But, you know, these kinds of discussions are always for the third person in the room. You know what I mean? So I would encourage you guys, you know, don't fall into the trap of making this about political tribalism. It's really not. But I'm really curious what you guys think of why it is that we're only seeing right-leaning and right-wing people who seem interested in uncovering what happened here. And I can tell you it's not just that they can see that it's damaging for Gavin Newsom. That's not the only thing. That's certainly a part of the motivation for some people, but that's not it. And I don't think it should be like right-wing coded to want to get to the bottom of what happened to Palisades Fire. And the thing is, you guys might wonder, okay, why is it that we're always talking about the Palisades Fire and the Eden Fire? There's a few reasons. First off, I grew up in the Palisades. I know it very well. I've got family who was affected by it. Like my uncle's house got burned. Fortunately, it survived. But my aunt's place got totally destroyed. My cousin's place got totally destroyed. One cousin, their place survived, but they're selling it. So obviously I have a lot of roots in the Palisades. I know it well. But the other thing is, regardless of that, there was just so much so much tomfoolery on that fire. We had the empty reservoirs. Altadena ran out of water too, because this happens on those kinds of fires. But Altadena had like 70 mile per hour winds. Palisades did not have that. Okay. So the Palisades could have aircraft on it, but the aircraft were hampered by the empty reservoirs. And there's another issue that I've been made aware of just today. I don't know if I should talk about it, but there seems to be some conflicting information on the pre-positioning of resources and some requests that may have been made that were not honored. I'll wait to release that information because I'm not sure if I'm allowed to talk about it just yet. But that's the thing is, once you start pulling the thread on the Palisades fire, so much more comes out. Now, with the Eaton fire, there was a burn plan that has been stalled out in the U.S. Forest Service. There were multiple prescribed fires that were poo-pooed by hoity-toity residents of nearby communities. And they blocked prescribed fire that may have helped. Okay, so that to me is a big scandal. But ultimately, the Eaton fire was 70 mile an hour winds and power lines. And there wasn't so much more to it than that. And I don't mean to diminish the catastrophe, but in terms of uncovering potential criminal liability or criminal negligence, I just don't really see that with Altadena. The Palisades, it did not go down the way that it should have. It did not go down the way that it could have. So anyway, that's all I got, guys. The wife and I are heading to the Gulf of America tomorrow, so we might do it live. We might Acer and Vivo. I'm going to do the whole live stream. We'll do what, Sunday, Monday, Tuesday, and I'll do it all in Spanish. How's that? All right, guys. Enjoy your weekend. I'm going to try to get a tan. We'll see if that's possible. I'm pretty pasty because I spend all my time sitting in front of the computer talking to you guys. I'm talking to helicopters on the internet. That's why I'm pasty. Anyway, I appreciate all you guys. Thanks for joining me on a Friday. It's good to know who the real nerds are. If you're in here on a Friday night during the summer, you are a nerd, and God bless you. And remember, in this dystopian world of AI, the only way to prove you're a human is to do it live.